The settlement of Iceland is generally believed to have begun in the second half of the 9th century, when Norse settlers migrated across the North Atlantic. The reasons for the migration may be traced to a shortage of arable land in Scandinavia and civil strife brought about by the ambitions of the Norwegian king Harald I of Norway. Unlike the British Isles, Iceland was unsettled land and could be claimed without conflict with existing inhabitants. Historians typically refer to the year 874 as the first year of settlement, and the Icelandic age of settlement is considered to have lasted from 874 to 930, at which point most of the island had been claimed in Orðingi. The Assembly of the Icelandic Commonwealth was founded in Thingvellir. Almost everything known about the first settlers comes from Íslendingabók by Ari Thorgilsson, and Landnámabók, two historical records preserved in skin manuscripts. Landnámabók lists 435 men as the initial settlers, the majority of them settling in the northern and southwestern parts of the island. First explorers and settlers. Gaelic monks. The Íslendingabók of Ari Thorgilsson claims that the Norse settlers encountered Gaelic monks from a Hiberna Scottish mission when they arrived in Iceland. There is some archaeological evidence for a monastic settlement from the British Isles at Kirkjufellia Cave, on the Selhalland farm in southern Iceland. Sediment deposits indicate people lived there around 800, and crosses consistent with the Hiberna Scottish-style were carved in the wall of a nearby cave. The oldest known source which mentions the name of Iceland is an 11th century Gothic rune carving, while the oldest archaeological finds indicating settlement date back to the 9th century. Ridiculous claimed to have met some monks who had lived on the island of Thule. They said that darkness reigned during winter but that the summers were bright enough to pick lice from one's clothing. While the veracity of this source may be questioned, there is little doubt that the inhabitants of the British Isles were aware of a sizable land mass far up north. Additionally, Iceland is only about 450 kilometers from the Faroes, which had been visited by Irish monks in the 6th century, and settled by the Norse around 650. A cabin in Hafni was abandoned between 770 and 880, showing that it was built well before the traditional settlement date of 874. It is thought to have been an outpost only inhabited part of the year, but it is not known whether it was built by people from Scandinavia or the British Isles. Nadod and Garthur. The Landnámabók claims that the first Norseman to rest his feet on Icelandic soil was a Viking by the name of Nadod. Nadod stayed for only a short period of time, but gave the country a name, Snaland. He was followed by the Swede Garthur Svervarsson, who was the first to stay over winter. At some time around 860, a storm pushed his ship far to the north until he reached the eastern coast of Iceland. Garthur approached the island from the east, sailed westward along the coast and then up north, building a house in Húsavík. He completed a full circle, circumnavigating the island and establishing that the landmass in question was indeed an island. He departed the following summer, never to return but not before giving the island a new name, Garðarsmur. One of his men, Knapfari, decided to stay behind with 2 slaves. Knapfari settled in what is now known as Knapfaravík, close to Skjálfandi. Landnámabók maintains that Knapfari was not a permanent settler. Rafna Floki. There was a man by the name Floki Vilgatharsson. He was a great Viking. He left to find Garðarsmur. Landnámabók, the second Norseman to arrive in Iceland, was named Floki Vilgatharsson, but the year of his arrival is not clear. According to the story told in Landnámabók, he took 3 ravens to help him find his way. Thus, he was nicknamed Raven Floki. Floki set his ravens free near the Faroe Islands. The first raven flew back to the Faroes. The second flew up in the air and then returned to the ship. However, the third flew in front of the ship and they followed its direction to Iceland. He landed in Vatnsfjörður in the West Fjords after passing what is now Reykjavik. One of his men, Faxi, remarked that they seem to have found great land. The bay facing Reykjavik is therefore known as Faxaflói. A harsh winter caused all of Floki's cattle to die. He cursed this cold country, and when he spotted a drift ice in the fjord he decided to name it Iceland. Despite difficulties in finding food, he and his men stayed another year, this time in Borgarfjörður, but they headed back to Norway the following summer. Floki would return much later and settle in what is now known as Flókadalur. Ingólfur Arnarson, there was a man of the North, Norway, Ingolf, who was truly said to be the first Levite for Iceland. In the time when Harald the Fairhead was 16 winters of age, he settled south in Reykjavik. Islendingabok, another Norseman by the name of Ingólfur Arnarson, had instigated a blood feud in his homeland, Norway. He and his foster brother Hjörleifur went on an exploratory expedition to Iceland, and stayed over winter in what is now Álftafjörður. A few years later, they returned to settle the land with their men. When they approached the island, Ingólfur cast his high sea pillars overboard and swore that he would settle where they drifted to shore. He then sent his slaves Vífil and Kali to search for the pillars. They found his foster brother Hjörleifur murdered, and all his men gone. Ingólfur gave his foster brother a heathen funeral in the Norse style and slew the murderers, who had fled to the Westman Islands. As winter approached, Ingólfur's slaves found the pillars by Arnarville. When summer came, he built a farmstead in Reykjavik and claimed all the land west of the rivers of Ölfusá, Öxará and Bryndudalsá. His slave Kali did not care for the location, and said to Ingólfur, "How ill that we should pass good land, to settle in this remote peninsula." Age of settlement begins. The age of settlement in Iceland is considered to have begun with Ingólfur's settlement, for he was the first to sail to Iceland with the purpose of settling the land. He was followed by many others. Within about 60 years, all the usable land had been taken. Landnámabók manuscripts mention 1,500 farm and place names, and more than 3,500 people. The material is arranged in a geographical fashion and seems to give a relatively complete picture of how the country was settled. Scholars estimate that between 15,000 and 20,000 people migrated to the country during the Age of Settlement. Controversial results of recent carbon dating work, published in the journal Skirnir, suggest that the country may have been settled as early as the second half of the 7th century. Age of Settlement ends. The Age of Settlement is considered to have ended in the year 930 with the establishment of Alþingi, when almost all land in the country had been claimed by settlers.